because he actually couldn't make it next week. So for him,
yeah, so I
it
mean,
was
you can
very
move it around and
convenient.
stuff. And then, you
Now,
know, if Hank's
when I
talking,
checked the YouTube, he has 182 YouTubes right now. Did you know that, Brendon?
YouTubes. How many YouTubes do I have, Hank?
182. And I watched last Friday's event, and they were talking about wisdom and how we become wise, and the discussions that at his group are absolutely fascinating. He runs a weekly TV show, or actually a radio show,
online radio show.
and Brendon, of course, is a product of Fanshawe College, where he's been learning the film and media stuff, and when he graduated, he actually produced a film, which I'm sure he'll tell you more about it later. But this young man, he is just an outstanding character. You can't box him, you can't label him, he's just unique. He's a very different man. And I'm glad, because you know, he really empowers a lot of young people at this moment in time. Not just around London, but worldwide through the media that obviously he is very good at. So I've seen his movie, very impressive. He has copies there. And I don't know what will happen, but I'm going to ask him to stop at 8 o'clock, whatever happens. The clock's right behind you. But I'm sure that you will be well entertained. And with Brendon, it's always ideal to interrupt him because he just keeps going and going and going like the ever-ready bunny. So interrupt him to ask questions so that it focuses on what you want to know rather than what he wants to tell you, because he is just a world of wisdom. And I've always enjoyed talking to him and listening to his stories. But what we often do here at Seekers is our program runs into 4 parts. The first part I'm doing right now. The second part is to get grounded and to get into our soul by short meditation. Then there is the presentation, and then Margaret takes over with the gratitude part and the announcements. So there is refreshments. The bathroom are just down the hall. You're not tied to your seat. If you need to get up, get up. If you need to move, move. If you feel like a cookie or something sweet, get up and grab yourself whatever you need. And that's how the evening unfolds. So we're going to ask him to stop at 8 o'clock, and then we'll open it up to some more questions. And when the appropriate time comes around, I'll say, okay, that's it. We'll turn Margaret on, and we'll finish up the evening. So, Brendon, would you like to lead us in the meditation, and I'll turn down the light.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Hank. And I would like to lead the meditation. So, and then I'll get into introducing myself, and we'll just go from there. So, I would just ask everybody to just get comfortable. Have your hands either just gently on the top of your thighs or interlace one thing in particular. If you'd like to work this into your meditation, sometimes I have my hands like this with my thumbs touching and my pinky touching, and you can actually feel and focus on the pulse within the fingertips, which is interesting to work into your meditation. So feel free to use that while we're doing our meditation here today. So to keep things moving forward, just ask everybody to get as comfortable as they need to, and close your eyes. We'll just start off with a simple breath, just gently breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Being able to connect with your breath is perhaps one of the most important tools that we have within this physical dimension. This breath is the one breath we are given. It is the one breath we share. It is a cosmic breath, ever expanding, ever contracting, for infinity. So allow your attention to be brought onto this breath. And while we're sitting here, we're just going to use our imagination a little bit. Because imagination is an incredibly powerful thing, and it's not simply something for children. So to start, imagine that within your heart there is a white light, emanating. A brilliant, pulsating white light, the divine spark of your essence. At this point, I ask you to focus on your heartbeat. Feel it throughout your entire body. Imagine that from this white spark within your heart, a root begins to grow down towards the ground, moving through your solar plex, towards your waist, down through your upper thighs, past your knees, into your calves, into your feet, and through your feet into the ground. As they continue to move down, connecting to the earth, to Mother Gaia, to the crystal that resonates at the core of her heart. For her heart is the heart that we share. With every breath, with every heartbeat, you are connected with this energy of the earth. And with these roots established, you can feel the energy moving from her heart into your heart. Just breathe here for a couple moments. Now, with these roots still firmly established, imagine that a beam emanates from your heart upwards, up through your throat, up through your face, through your third eye, opening at your crown and expanding as a vibrant beam of light shining up into the sky above us. This is the light that connects us to the source around us. Same way that we are connected to the Mother Spirit of Earth, we too are connected to the Father Spirit of the heavens. But perhaps one of the most simplest things to understand is all this talk about a spiritual reality does not require us to go somewhere else, but rather to realize that this world is equally as spiritual as the next. And we are always connected to those divine energies around us. So with more focus on the breath, feel this connection of white light shooting from your crown, connecting through your heart, right through to the core of the earth. You're now entirely connected to both the Mother and the Father. Just take the next few moments in silence and let your mind go where it needs to. Take 2 more deep breaths. Really take in as much energy as you can as you fill your lungs. And remember, these connections we've established with our imagination are always there. And simply through the act of consciously returning to our breath, we can remind ourselves of this connection and open ourselves to the full potential of this reality. When you're ready, gently open your eyes and return yourselves to the room around you.
I have a bunch of latecomers, so I'll get following.
No problem. So that was just one form of meditation. There's obviously lots and lots and lots of different ways that we can meditate. And I'm sure that's a topic entirely in its own, and maybe we can get into that. And to be honest, I've done talks here, this is my third or my fourth at least, right? Going back to 2008 or 2009, give or take, when Margaret and Hank were so gracious enough to invite me, having only been here for one session.
Well, it was because you came for one session and people said, bring him back.
Well, I'm glad and I'm happy to be back.
I think you were talking to Bruce Tallman.
It was Bruce Tallman who was talking about 2012, so very relevant. I'm sure some of what was talked about then will be talked about tonight as well. So I've been quite busy, and to be honest, I don't have anything particularly planned for what I'm talking about here tonight. I know the subject is the paradigm shift from my perspective, so from that I'll jump off. But please, at any point, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Like that's what I would like at this point, is if I'm talking about something and someone has an immediate question, let me know, and then we can branch off into the discussion from there. In that sense, this would be similar to what we do within the paradigm shift communities that I help facilitate. It's very much about communal discussion, opposed to just one person standing on a pedestal by any means. So I'll start off to give you a little bit of a background on who I am. My name is Brendon. My last name is Culleton, and my middle name is Randall, and that translates to wolf shield. And the wolf is my spirit animal, and that's something that I didn't always know, but it's something that I've come into learning. A lot of people, everybody has a spirit animal, you could say. People have multiple spirit animals, and one way to think of a spirit animal is also to think about it as a spirit teacher. So rather than just saying like, I am a wolf, rather I look to the wolf to gain wisdom, to gain teachings. Like, what is the way of the wolf? Like, how do I emanate that? And if you look up like spirit animal wolf, and you can go home and read this tonight, and then maybe it will make sense having like listened to me here today, and you judge for yourself. Like, am I wolf-like? That's up to you. But one of the characteristics of wolf is like leadership, trailblazing, like going where others don't, sort of thing, and community and family, loyalty. So that to me is a big part of what I'm doing in terms of like this whole paradigm shift community. So when I first met Margaret and Hank, that was, like I said, about in 2008, and I came here, and I had just recently returned back from Vancouver, and I was only there for about 3 months, and I was doing a lot of soul searching, I guess you could say that, and I was spending a lot of time by myself, and I was doing a lot of research on the internet. A big part of what got me into, I've always been an outside-the-box thinker, you could say. I've always been inquisitive, I've always been creative, I've always been into the arts, drama, theater, and eventually digital media. And in 2001, quite simply, when the attacks happened in New York on 9/11, that, for me, eventually led to going further down the rabbit hole. I started hearing about conspiracies on the internet, and obviously with the computer at my fingertips, I started looking up stuff, and then from there, that opened me up into this whole other branch of topics relating to spirituality, but not limited to spirituality, because what I pursue is knowledge and truth and wisdom, and specifically knowledge through experience. So I mean, opposed to just reading about something, I want to be able to experience it for myself firsthand, because we can only know something if we've truly experienced it. I mean, I can talk to you about like how I had the most amazing experience in a meditation or whatever, but if you've never meditated, you won't know until you get that for yourself. And even then, you won't know my experience, it will be your experience. So that's, truth is subjective in that point. But there are what I believe to be fundamental truths, universal truths that sort of exist within each of us as innate knowledge, as spiritual beings. There's certain patterns, there's certain ways that things unfold, and this is something that a big part of this whole paradigm shift thing that I've been moving forward with is that I feel a lot of what we're doing isn't so much a process of simply learning as much as it is a process of remembering. It's remembering what we already know, like as soul, as the fact that like we are much more than this physical body. So after I started doing a bunch of research, like I said, that was about in 2001. And that kept me busy for quite some time. And then flash forward about 7 years later, like I said, I'd been in Vancouver. I had some spiritual experiences out there and some very synchronistic occurrences. Synchronicity simply being, like coincidence with meaning. And that for me was a big wake-up call. When I was asking the universe, I said, look, like I want to meet other people. Like where are they? Like I want to meet them. And then with about 2 weeks or 3 weeks left in my 3-month stay in Vancouver, like I'd been down there and I'd been like spending a lot of time like sitting on a bench, and I was going back to the same bench like day after day almost, and I was just writing on my own. And then one day when I was there, a girl came up to me. Well, first of all, she walked past me and she picked up on something. She knew, she was very spiritual in herself, and she walked past me and I didn't notice her. And something said to her, go back and talk to him, right? And then she came up and she talked to me. She's like, hey, can I ask you a question? I'm like, absolutely. And she's like, do you want to change the world? And I was just like, smile on my face, right? I'm just like, yes, of course, right? And then I was like, finally, someone who knows, like, who's on that same level of where I'm coming from. So then from there, I spent the entire day like with her and her boyfriend, and we were up until 4 a.m. just exchanging information and talking about the mysteries of the universe. And I was like, yes, this is what I wanted. Because I mean, up until that point, I did have friends here in London who I could talk to about this stuff, but it really wasn't engaged at that level, so to speak. So at that point, I was becoming more aware that the universe works with us, that we're not just like an individual like entity that's sort of like closed in this physical shell. It's this idea that our thoughts are the thoughts of the universe. So when we think something, the universe is listening. So when we ask for something, the universe is listening, and it gives us the potential to receive it. And so in this case, it was me running into these people and me being able to identify that like this was beyond happenstance. Like I met these people for a reason. What reason was it? And for me, a lot of it was motivation. It was saying like, if this can happen here, this can happen again and again and again and again and again. If I can meet this girl on this park bench in this synchronistic manner, then I can meet people in my city of London in the same way, using certain tools, using certain methods, using certain tactics. Is literally like I approached what I was doing from a very tactical point of view, or an artistic point of view. So when I came back from Vancouver, as I said, I came to one of the Seekers meetings, and I liked what they were doing here, this open forum discussion. And from there, I was attending college at the time. I was in my second year of when was I? Anyways, I was going back for my 5th year, actually. So I had 1 more year left in the college, give or take. And when I went back there, I went back with the intention of creating a club within the college. And the club at that time was called Paradigm Shift Fan Shop. So basically, at that point, I knew that there were other people in the college who were like me, who were looking for people like me to talk to. So then I had given myself a mission. How do I find them? So I started creating events, I started creating posters, and a lot of what I was doing related around a specific symbol that I created for the group. And I don't have that on me, but I mean, if you go to the website afterwards, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And this symbol is something that I designed when I was in Vancouver, and it represents a lot of things, but in a lot of ways it represents like a beacon. So if you see the website that I do, the symbol is everywhere, and the symbol is encapsulated with like a lot of energy, and this goes back to this idea of magic, and I think there's some on the table there, so Hank, you can pass that around if you want. There's only 2, so I mean, even if you just pass that around, then you'll see what I'm talking about, and even just there, just sort of look at that symbol and like, what does it say to you? Because it doesn't mean one thing in particular, but when I made it, you could say that it was like partially designed like through my higher self. And it wasn't until later that I was beginning to decipher it. And if you look at it, and those are familiar with sacred geometry, you'll see there's like sacred geometry elements of it. Like it reflects like Metatron's cube and a lot of other things in a lot of ways. And to me, it represents like community and balance and focus and intention and a whole bunch of stuff. So I mean, that was just one aspect of the paradigm shift thing. I knew that a symbol was going to be an important element to it. I didn't think what I was going to be able to do would be as successful unless I had the symbol, and unless I had the intention behind the symbol. And that's something we can get into more. So when I set up the stuff at the college, it started off quite well. We had some guest speakers come in. And one of the first topics that we addressed was the topic of lucid dreaming and astral projection, and we had a guest speaker come in. And just as a tip for the people here, I think a big part of like this whole paradigm shift thing, and like I said, like there's a part within all of us that wants to know, that has this curiosity, that wants to understand like what this reality is about. I mean, yes, a lot of us are busy with jobs and a lot of us are distracted, but if you really get down to the meat of it, there's a part of us inside that is extremely curious as to like those big questions, like what is this reality? What are we here for?
I can tell you why we're so curious.
Why are we so curious?
Well, because angels are curious, and we are part angel.
There you go.
And the more you exercise your angel within, the more curious one becomes.
Yeah, it's a constant seek, that constant quest that we're on, and it is quite infinite, and that's the exciting part about it. This whole idea of like going down the rabbit hole, like it keeps going, literally. Like there's so much to learn, and that's the exciting part. So in terms of even for anybody here who's trying to create conversation with either a stranger or a friend, I would suggest bringing up the topic of dreaming to them, because that's something that everybody does. So it's obviously something that we can all reference. It's something we can all talk about. And when you get into the topic of dreaming, right away it brings up one of the most potent themes of this whole paradigm shift, that from my perspective. And this theme is the idea that we are multidimensional beings by nature. And that's evident within our dreams. I mean, a lot of people, like some scientists will just say like, oh, dreams are just like memories recycling themselves, and it's just the brain keeping itself busy while the body's at rest. But if you look at it from another way, it's this idea that it's consciousness existing in like other dimensional planes that we are innately still connected to. And like that's this whole idea that like consciousness itself exists outside of the body. Like this, it brings you back to this idea that like this body is a vehicle. And we as a driver, our spirit, our soul, our angels, as Hank says, we are consciousness. And consciousness is everywhere. So what we are is just a fractal, like a branch of like the oversoul, if you want to call that. And the oversoul is a term that it works for me in describing things. I mean, a lot of people, you could call this oversoul God if you want. It basically sort of, like from here, like all of us are here in this room, but then if you were to sort of like go up one level, it'd be like a collective of all of us, and then you go up another level and it's like a collective of the globe, and then you can go up another level and it's like the collective of a galaxy and a universe. So right, it's a hierarchy, so to speak. And when you sort of get this, it brings you back to this idea that we are consciousness communicating to itself through the universe and through the language of symbols. And that was one of the key things that really resonated with me, this idea that the universe communicates to itself through the language of symbols. And that's where you get into this idea of like synchronicity, like seeing like 11:11 and stuff like that. And it's 11:11 today, which again, because I was supposed to be doing this a week from now, and then happenstance, here we are today on 11/11. So just to sort of go back to what I was talking about in terms of like lucid dreaming and astral projection, I think being able to get someone to genuinely be curious or to legitimately understand that we are multidimensional beings is a huge fundamental part in helping them move forward on their spiritual path, because like that opens you up to so much. It gives you a reason to meditate. You understand that that this reality that we're living in is like only half of this, like not even half, like who we think we are is only a fraction of who we really are, and we can learn. Is that a timeout?
No, I was just gonna say, this is a good time to ask the question about who relates to what I've shared.
Right. And again, does anybody have any questions at this current moment, or do you want me to just sort of
I'd like
continue?
to make a comment.
Sure, yeah.
Something I thought was interesting. We judge the world by what we see. And it was interesting as far as like the wavelength of what we do see compared to all the other wavelengths out there. We only see actually 0.5% of the amount of energy. And so that means that 99.5% of the energy out there we don't see. Now, of course, we can take some of this stuff, like say ultraviolet or X-ray, and we can kind of bring it down to a level we can sort of compare. But it's interesting to note that so much energy is out there, and we judge our world by 0.5% of what's out there.
Exactly. Yeah, and just to go off what Larry's saying, that to me was a big part of it. Through visceral experiences, I had seen these other energies, so to speak, and I knew that they were there through my own experience. Now at this point, that gave me the confidence to say and to move forward to other people to say like, yes, there is more, and I know because I've seen it, but I can't give it to you. You have to see it for yourself.
So everybody's here listening to you, and I'm wondering how many people that are here have similar drive within. Maybe not as powerful as Brendon, but how many people here know why they're here right now? Anybody? Yeah? Why are you here?
I've been seeing 1111 for like 12 years probably or more, and I just really discovered what it meant a couple months ago, and I moved 20 hours to be here today.
Wow.
20 hours away, 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So yeah,
Thank you. So what does 1111 mean to you?
it means that I have to learn whatever I can about light working or everything that he's talking about, and I have to help people, help other people learn about it.
Wow,
That's my purpose for
beautiful.
living.
Anyone else?
What is 11/11? I don't even know.
Do you want me?
November 11th.
You could.
We're talking about today.
Oh, that's good.
No, but what is the significance
What's 11?
of, what is the significance
What's
of
11?
that beyond what's
Right.
commonly accepted?
Yeah, so my understanding of the significance of 1111 goes back to this idea that the universe is always trying to communicate to itself through the language of symbols. Right? Symbols are the most basic language, like geometry, sacred geometry goes back to that. So
Can I clarify that just a little bit more?
before, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so only humans have language and intellect.
Right.
Outside of the human realm, we don't have intellect. So if you want to talk to your angels, don't talk to them intellectually, talk to them with symbols and emotions and feelings. So that's how you connect with the universe. So go ahead now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So my simple understanding of 1111 is it's there for the universe to try and wake us up. It represents like a gateway number. I mean, symbolically, you look at it, it's like 1111, right? It looks like a gateway, right? And it's, you know, it's the only numbers in our clock that are that symmetrical. I mean, you can get 444 and 555, et cetera, but like 1111 is very distinct in the sense that it looks the way it does and it's, you know, shows up twice a day sort of thing. So when you see 1111, I think it starts off there's two phases to it. When people are not as awakened yet, it's the universe trying to say like when they, you know, they're driving, they're going about their day, they look at the clock, it's 11:11. You know, they hadn't checked the clock the entire day, and then that just like, they're just like, whoa, like what? Like this is so peculiar, right? That peculiarness, like that reaction, is what the universe wants. It's trying to be like, it's just trying to be like, hey, you know, like wake up, you know, like there's more to this. Like I'm trying to show you that like there's something going on here, right? So when you start to get into that, and eventually, you know, that might lead someone to look up like 1111 on the internet, and then it opens them up into like light workers and all this new information that they haven't heard about. And then the second phase of it, once you've already established like what it is, at that point it becomes like reaffirmation, like confirmation. So if you're on your path, if you're like in your zen, if you're in the moment, if you're doing what you need to do in an honest manner, you know, if you're feeling that you're carrying the load and you're doing as much as you can with integrity, and you see 1111, that's the universe saying like, keep it up, good job, keep going, you are on your path, keep going, sort of thing, right? So again, it starts off trying to say, wake up, wake up, wake up, and then eventually it's saying, you're already awake and you're doing a good job, just keep going. And that's where you keep seeing it, right?
You see more numbers after
And then you
that.
see, yeah, and then the whole idea.
In numerology, the number 11 means, in numerology, the number 11 means that it is connected to a previous lifetime. So that it is reincarnational. And very much at that point in time, it's like a deja vu. There's a sense of deja vu as well.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful one because when you experience 1111, then you know that the lessons you learned in another lifetime is coming back right here, right now. According to numerology.
Yeah, numerology is pretty interesting too. So again, you know, and it can start off as 1111, but eventually it can be other things. You can literally program your own reality. So for me, and I've talked about this before in some of the groups, for me, 1111 works for anyone, right, obviously, but you can create your own number sequences. So for me, my big numbers are 9-6 or 6-9, but particularly 9-6. And part of the reason for that is because I have it tattooed on my wrist. So like, I don't know if you can like see it there, but I mean, that was what I got like when I came back from Vancouver. And that number, I actually decided on getting that the same night that I had met that girl that I was talking about. And we were sitting there and we were like on a trampoline and I was like, hey, let's practice being psychic for a second. I was like, all right, I'm gonna like take my notebook and I'm gonna like write down a number and you have to guess and you have to guess, her boyfriend who was there too. And then so I did that and we meditated for a bit and then like right away she was like 9-6. And then like the guy was like, He was like, I don't know, I'm seeing 8-2, 8-2. And then I was like, it's like, oh, but like both of you are right. Because like if you take 9-6 and you look at it, again, you know, it's the same thing just from a different perspective. If you look at it, it's an infinity symbol through the 9 and the 6, which is the 8, and then the two pillars are the 2. So it was both 9-6 and 8-2 at the same time. And then so from that was written in my book, and then I was coming to the end of my journey. I'm like, all right, I need something to go home with, right? And then that became my like resonating number, and the fact that I got it like on my wrist is very symbolic because like I can always reflect on it, and it sort of represents like purpose in and intention out, like yin yang, polarity, duality, you know, all that. So that was a very cool thing. Now, just one thing that I want to mention in terms of like this whole paradigm shift thing, and you know, because there are these paradigm shift elements when it comes to sort of like shifting your perception on reality. And one of the key things, and Hank alluded to it earlier, is this idea of like past lessons in a previous life. And that's a big thing that, you know, like society doesn't really encourage, this idea of reincarnation, so to speak. It's a very Eastern thing, but not so much a Western thing. But I think if you can wrap your head around this, that not only do we have past lives, but we exist beyond the now in a very simplistic way. So like if this is us in the now, the past exists as like a branch. So imagine like this is like the root, and then like in the same way that we're projecting our roots through our meditation, like branches like go out into the past and they also branch out into the future. And then so you have like two trees sticking out in opposite directions, like kind of like that, you know? And then like in one direction it represents like a quantified exponential reality that does exist as data, but we haven't like moved through it yet, in the same way that there's like multiple parallel realities within our past. And that gets into this idea of like holographic reality and infinite parallel universes. But what that evidently comes down to is this idea of that's the programming of that's how the universe is intentionally structured that way so that we can create reality. Because through this whole parallel universe, like infinite parallel universes, we're constantly like here in the now, and we're projecting our thoughts into the future. And with every new thought, we create a branch. And then that branch like establishes itself as a potential possible reality. And then like where we are now, we have the choice to move, but then we also have the choice to like change our mind and then like move towards another reality. But the other one that we did create does still exist in a, like a quantified state, even though we may not experience it, so to speak. Like it's still something.
Do you realize what you opened up here when you say that?
What did I open up in?
That's the part that creates confusion within the universe, and that's the part where we feel so burdened with life. Because if we set a clear intention and we stay on the path, then we won't be as burdened as much. So what you're saying is if you change your thought, you're leaving some unknown stuff left there, and there might still be the universe trying to get that for you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's still there. And so, I mean, this whole idea of infinite parallel realities and like this branching in a quantum sense, like this goes back to like what the mystics were saying, that like as you think, so shall you become. Like that's
big.
That's the big thing. That literally is. And again, you know, like I said, like our thoughts are not just stuck within our head. Like our thoughts exist. Every thought that we have is heard by the universe. So everything that you ask for, the universe will give it back to you if that's really what you want. And which is why, like, in this whole paradigm shift thing, we have to be very conscious of what we're thinking, because it's so easy for us to attract negative thoughts to our own lives unintentionally without us even realizing it. Negative people have a tendency to stay negative, and then they keep attracting negativity to them without realizing that they themselves are the root of that negativity. So one of the key things in terms of like manifesting your own reality, and it's quite simple thing, is to understand that the universe doesn't understand not. It doesn't understand like the word no. So, and this is an example I've given plenty of times. If you're unwell, rather than saying, I don't want to be sick, I don't want to be sick, I don't want to be sick, you say, I want to be healthy. Quite simple, right? Because if you say, I don't want to be sick, the universe is hearing, I want to be sick. And it keeps you sick, and it keeps you in that reality. It's not until you literally shift your thought patterns that you actually shift which reality you're moving into. So I mean, going back to this infinite parallel realities, what we're constantly doing all the time as multidimensional beings is we are shifting our reality to align with a new one. So it's not like, again, we're not just physically walking through this reality, we're literally constantly like shifting through multiple parallel realities every single fraction of a second. And that kind of goes back to like what Larry was saying with like this fact that like there's other energies around us, and there's colors that we cannot see right now, but I assure you they are there. There is no such thing as empty space. And if you could see that, it would be quite obvious to you that we are infinite beings of light. And that brings me to my next point, which is a big paradigm shift moment for me, was this idea of like, well, why are we here where we are? Like, why would the universe do this to itself? Why would it put itself in a state where it didn't know what it was? You know, like, and I sort of use this analogy where like the universe put itself in a prison, and I use the term prison loosely, put itself in a prison so that it could eventually get out of it to go through the process of remembering what it was. Like the universe literally like gave itself amnesia, existing within us, just so we could go through the learning experience of remembering. And that brings me back to what I said before, like it's this whole remembering process, and that's such a key thing. And when you realize that we're remembering stuff opposed to just like reading things out of a textbook for the first time, it opens you up to this innate knowledge. And it's going to get to the point where like it's cool that you're listening and that I'm telling you stuff here, but I assure you that this knowledge is within each and every one of us. And like that is a big thing, right? Like we have the guru within all of us, like the Christ consciousness. Like I'm not just talking about like the man Jesus, like I'm talking about the Christ consciousness that is like rising in vibration right now. Like this whole 2012 thing, like this is us embodying that spark within us that is the innate divine intelligence that knows that like it is more than our physical body. And when you get to that point, another big paradigm shifting moment is you can look into someone's eyes and you don't just see another person. You see you. You see the universe. Like I'm me, but I am you, trying to get you to wake up. Like I am consciousness, doing whatever it takes to awaken consciousness. And then once we can do that, that's where we start changing the world. Like, is this whole world, is this an experiment? Yes. Like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Again, infinite parallel realities in front of us. It is nice to think that things are going to work out just fine, but it is not guaranteed. And in terms of like the work that I'm here to do, like as a light worker, as a light warrior, a big part of it is realizing that it's not just going to happen. I can't just like say like, oh, you know, I'll just go with the flow. I mean, that's a big part of it, don't get me wrong. But I have to be able to like commit. I have to be able to stay dedicated. I have to have like consistency and willpower. And that involves habit. That involves like cultivation of energy in a lot of ways. And that involves like understanding, and this is, you know, take this just separately as its own, understanding that rest is an essential part of work. A lot of times, like all of us, we're going around, we're trying to change the world, but we're not taking care of ourselves. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we're not truly helping as much as we can. So, I mean, in order to help the world, we have to help ourselves first. Hank?
I've got a little story here about a guy who wanted a van. He really wanted a van bad, and he had put in his mind that he wanted a van. He wanted a van, he wanted a van. But life circumstances didn't allow him to buy the van because his wife didn't necessarily say, you need a new car yet, and other circumstances said, oh, you'd have to wait until he gets the van. But he was insisted on, and he in his mind saw him driving his van. So one day, he gets out on the road, and somebody smacks him on the side of the car, and his car was demolished. He had a bit of a shoulder problem, but for the rest of it, 2 weeks later, he got his van. So in other words, he was focusing on it so bad, and then of course everybody felt sorry for him because he had an accident, and all of a sudden everything focuses on the accident, So I bluntly asked him, I said, do you know why you had your accident? He said, well, I don't know. I said, you wanted a van more than anything else in your life. And he never thought of it that way. So be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because you'll get it sooner or later, and if you don't help make it happen, the universe will smack you. So it will happen. So you can get it easy way or you can get it the hard way, but if you focus on it, you get what you want. Right? Powerful story.
My sister's a prime example of a couple things that you've mentioned tonight. Her husband was out of work. They were living in New Brunswick. She wanted to move back to Ontario, so she kept putting out there, I don't want to move to Calgary. I don't want to move to Calgary. A year and a half later, his first job offer was a good one in Calgary. So where are they? Calgary.
There you go.
She's moving, driving to move out there. She's not taking care of herself. She's exhausted. She hits the guardrail. Does a little bit of damage. The driver's side door can't open, but the car is drivable, and everything's okay. And it was her wake-up call. Take care of yourself. We get messages all the time, and if we don't listen, then the messages get tougher until they do get through to us.
Yeah, that's actually something that I did want to make sure to touch on. So we only have 13 minutes, right? All right, back and look at that magic 13. So, okay, so going back to like this whole idea of like reincarnation. So, okay, let me just back up to a couple points. So I met Margaret and Hank, and then I started a club in my college, and then that club eventually expanded outside the college into the London area, and now ParadigmShiftLondon.com or ParadigmShiftCentral.com is the website. So you can go there, and we have meetings every Friday where we encourage this type of open discussion conversation, where we as a community share our experiences to help like wake each other up, so to speak, is kind of the way to put it. And it started off here in London, obviously, and now Hank mentioned that I do a radio show every Saturday, which is an online radio show, Paradigm Shift Radio, and that has given me a platform to encourage people to do what I did here in their own communities. So now Paradigm Shift London is one of over 50 Paradigm Shift communities globally. Like there's a bunch in Canada, there's a bunch in the States, there's a bunch in Europe already, and they're growing. And it's a slow and steady thing, but it is happening. Because like the one in London, it took like 3-4 years until it actually became really solid, right? But it's creating the foundation. So that's just kind of, again, so ParadigmShiftLondon.com or ParadigmShiftCentral.com. It's the same website. and you'll see all my videos there as well. And going back to what Linda?
Yes.
Going back to what Linda was saying, going back to this reincarnation idea, it's this idea that we incarnated into this physical body with a purpose, with a contract, you could say. Like literally between lives, we chose who we were going to be. We chose our parents, we chose where we would want to be, we chose like our friends. And again, you know, like when you're sort of in this space between lives, you're existing in a space similar to where you are when you're dreaming. Like where we go when we dream is very similar to where we go when we're between lives. I mean, there's multiple levels within, like the astral plane is just one plane. You know, this is sort of getting complex, but there's multiple dimensions and stuff. But again, this physical reality is not all there is. We exist in multiple dimensions, and we can experience these multiple dimensions in conscious states, whether it be through conscious dreaming, which is known as lucid dreaming, or we're literally dead and we're conscious in the afterlife. But sometimes we don't come back and we don't remember that. You know, like there's our memory in the physical life and our memory in the astral plane, and the goal is to connect them, is to like have that golden like stream between them, because they're always there. But like so many of us are only holding on to this memory within this physical life. So that's, you know, how do we do that? How do we reclaim our, you know, it's our innate right to be able to have these experiences within the astral planes. How do we do that? A big part of that is like meditation and being able to study lucid dreaming and writing down your dreams is a big part of it. And again, that's a topic for another time. But what I want to say, going back to what Linda was saying, we come into this reality with a contract, and we also come in with lessons. And when we come in with the intention to say like, all right, I'm going to try and learn this, I'm going to try and learn this, I'm going to try and learn this. And there is no guarantee, but we do have the chance to put forth the best effort. And that was a big thing for me, is that reality does this. It puts forth the best effort. So like when you look at a tree and it branches up in the way it does, like it doesn't just shoot one branch. It shoots a bunch of branches, and each one of those branches is there to receive sunlight. So each one of those like branches represents like within us each one of our different choices. So you know, we do that. We don't just go in one direction. We put forth the best effort, and the universe is very resourceful. And if you look at a tree and the way it branches out, that will explain a lot to you about reality. Like you know, it's not coincidence that the way a tree branches is the way like the veins branch in our arms. Like that is not just a physical thing, like that's how we unfold in a multi-dimensional sense. And again, going back to like the future is a branch, the past is a branch, like it does that. And you can get into sacred geometry as well, and sacred geometry is a big way to explain this concept of infinity. You know, like for a while I was like, how do I, like infinity, like it just didn't make sense to me, right? But when you get into the idea of sacred geometry, you can see what infinity looks like. And a simple example is if you take what is commonly referred to as the Star of David. You can take the Star of David and you can put it inside itself. And then you can put another one inside of that, and another one inside of that, another one inside of that. And that Star of David is not just some arbitrary symbol. Like that is a fundamental geometric shape that reality expands on. And then you can get into this idea of a flower of life. So it starts off with like a single point, and then that point becomes a circle, and then circles build around that, and then eventually you get the shape of the star tetrahedron, which is what we recognize as the Star of David. And so again, sacred geometry is just something that I would suggest getting into if you want to understand this concept of infinity, because like that's us. We're a bunch of, we are the infinite fractals. We are the undulating fractals of reality. No, we are the, how did I word it originally? We are the, yeah, okay. We are the tendulating fractals of reality, forever undulating into the realm of great mystery and infinity, or something like that. Anyways, we're a bunch of trees and branches and infinity and stuff and light. It's fun, it really is. So, and then still, I haven't really gotten into what I was saying going back to Linda, but what I'm trying to say is that within this life, there's us, and then there's our higher selves. And our higher selves is that us that can see sort of like from a top-down perspective of where we might be able to go, where we are now, and where we came from. And we have these lessons, and they always come to us, and they're always there, and they're there to develop a soul, to develop a personality, to develop like our identity of who we will become. And if we have a lesson come into our lives and we don't get it the first time, it will come back to us. And all of us have experienced this in some way or another. And I've experienced it in a lot of ways myself. And you know, You'll go through a scenario, you'll think you're done with it, and then a week later, a month later, you'll be back in another scenario and be like, this is pretty familiar, right? And then it's just like, well, wait a second, okay, like what did I do that time? Maybe I need to do something different. But if you don't, you're probably going to repeat it. So until you actually consciously do something different using your willpower, you're going to be stuck in that cycle. And a lot of like this reality is sort of like breaking out of cycles. You know, we're like spiraling outwards, and each one is like going up to a next layer. But if we don't, then we're just going to keep going in circles, right? And we're never really like spiraling outwards. So what we want to do is get past that and really spiral outwards. And then that's where you get into like these huge experiences of what life is really about and what you came here to do. So yeah, I mean, that's those are some simple concepts, like this idea of multidimensional reality, lucid dreaming, astral projection. Even the idea of like psychic abilities was one thing that always caught my attention. Like we use language, it's such a common thing for us, but like as beings of light, our true language is vibration and emotion. And that's something that we need to be focusing on. So when you're talking to someone and you're looking them in the eyes, like don't just use your words. Speak with your heart. Use your emotions. Like, and I mean that literally, because like a lot of us are up here and we need to be down here. And like that's what this whole shift in consciousness is about, is moving from the mind up here into the mind within the heart. Because the heart knows. The mind thinks, the heart knows. So if we can really latch onto that, and then that's where you get into this idea of intuition. So if you're following your heart, you're probably going to be more likely to start seeing 1111, so to speak. So I mean, that's again, like that, you know, the universe is trying to help you identify if you're on the right path. And the universe is there to help you. It wants you to succeed, and it's doing whatever it takes to bring the certain moments into your life, to meet the certain people that you need to meet. So when I was doing this whole paradigm shift thing, like that was a really encouraging thing for me that kept me moving forward, is that like I knew that wherever I was at that moment, I was where I needed to be to get to where I was going. And call it faith, call it what you want, but like it was just an innate understanding that the universe unfolds in mysterious ways, but if you're patient and you're determined, you'll get to where you need to be, and you'll meet the people you will meet. And for me, a big part of this is meeting those people who I haven't met yet, and knowing that I'm already connected to them. And I know there's still people like here within London who I haven't met yet, so I'm always doing that. And as well as there's like people on a global network, because a lot of people are where I was 6 years ago. They felt alone. They felt like they were crazy. They didn't have anyone to talk to. So whether it's in a physical sense or in an online digital sense, it's about establishing that common ground and being able to tell that person that like you are not alone. Like there is a community here. We are here to support you, because like we are a spirit family. We are a soul family. And when you get down to that, like that's like a very, very empowering thing, I think, in a lot of ways. So I'll open it up to any other questions since there's a couple minutes left.
Any fun?
And I can talk for a couple
I know, you can just keep on going till midnight.
So listen to my radio show if you want to hear more.
So, does anybody have any comments or observations or questions? Go ahead, Connor.
Well, I have a
This might
question.
sound a little silly, but I never see 1111, but I do see 111. Does that mean I'm getting there? Or
I think that's the
is that
exact,
just my number?
yeah, I think that's the exact same thing.
Is it?
Yeah, if you're
Okay.
seeing, if you're consciously identifying that, then that's your thing. The universe knows that you're recognizing 111, so that's what it's giving you, right?
Okay.
But theoretically, you could shift that. You could start to be like, all right, I want to see 1111, and then start noticing if you do.
Okay.
So,
Doreen Virtue has a book called Angel Numbers 101, and in her book she says the 111 means keep your thoughts positive because you're manifesting whatever your thoughts are.
There's a good reminder, Donna. Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
Anyone else have any comments or observations or questions? Margaret?
Yes. You may not know, but Brendon is an award-winning videographer.
Oh, I should plug it
Yeah.
on the meeting.
And his video is cited a lot on Remembrance Day because it's about a soldier who dies in Afghanistan. So I've always wondered why you made this video.
Yeah, do you want to give me like, I can explain in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Once in a rush.
Can you handle that?
Yeah.
bonus vibe, because it does, no, and again, like, that's why, you know, like, the fact that we're here on 11/11 and 11/11 is Remembrance Day, like, it fits in nicely, so this is, you can see that, so. This is the film that Margaret is talking about. It's called If I Should Fall. And the film is a very spiritual film in its own way, and again, there's a lot that I can talk about in this. Trying to think of what not to say. Yeah, okay. So the film itself, as Margaret alluded to, the film itself, and if anybody's interested, we have it on sale for $20 today, and the proceeds go towards charity, and I have business cards that you can take, and there's a website. The film itself tells the story of a soldier who was killed in Afghanistan in 2009 by an improvised explosive device. And really, through a lot of happenstance, this story ended up in my lap, and I ended up editing this video, which has now like received numerous awards in multiple film festivals, both in America as well as in Canada. The interesting thing is that this was a very spiritual experience working on this film. Because I mean, step back, look at what we're doing here. I'm trying to tell the story of a young man's life who was he was the same age as me when he died. I'm trying to tell his life without actually having met him. And I assure you that while I was editing this, like, I was not alone. And this was like a big spiritual thing for me. Like, he was on my shoulder, and he's still on my shoulder. His name's Mark Diab. And, you know, I went and I saw, I had a bit of communication with the shaman and stuff. I had a private session, and she had seen the film, and she sort of reaffirmed that, like, indeed, there was this connection between me and him through not just this life. Like, you know, like, we knew each other in a previous life, and that alluded me to the idea of, you know, like, how predestined was this? Because if you watch the film, a big part of the story is that he had a very strong premonition of his own death. And he actually made a film to show at his funeral in case he should fall, which is where the title If I Should Fall comes from. And just, there were a few times where I was editing, and in particular, it was in an early stage of editing, and I was choosing a song, and it was actually before the editing of the actual movie began, but it was for like something to show at the anniversary of his death. And I created a song, like I created like a montage video using early footage that we had shown. And when I was editing it the day of, I woke up in the morning and a particular song was in my head. And then I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna use that song and I'm gonna make this, right? And I did that, and I edited it, and I showed it to the family. And a big part of the story is that he had a childhood sweetheart, his girlfriend, who he was going to propose to, but tragically he was killed 2 weeks before the end of his tour, which is a big part of the story. We showed it to the family, and the family, they came up to me, and like, they were crying, their eyes were huge, and they're like, how did you know, like, how did you choose that song? Like, where did you get that song from? And I was just like, it was in my head, it just came to me, sort of thing, right? And they're like, that's Mark and Mary's song. Like, that was their song. And then I was like, whoa, you know, like, but then I was like, from a spiritual perspective, I'm just like, okay, like, I was dreaming, I was in that state where we can communicate with those who have passed on, because like, when we're dreaming, we're in that other dimensional plane, and they're in that place where they can meet us halfway. And he left me with a message, and he came back, and to me, like, it wasn't totally conscious at the time, it just came through as a memory and this song in my head. But if you look at it from a certain perspective, that was literally him saying, use this song. Mary will like it. She'll love it. Use this song. And then I'm like, okay, I'll do it, I'll use the song. And then I did it, right? And then that was just a huge part. And then for me, I was just like, whoa, like, holy crap, like, what did I just take part in here? Like, was this real? Like, was this me, like, actually bringing something back from someone who had passed on? And for me, that was like a very profound moment, right? And then similar things happened as I was continuing to edit. It wasn't the first time, it happened a couple times. And I've had dreams like of meeting Mark, like, in a past life, and just like, you know, like me and him like actually having conversations. And it's just like, yeah, good job. Like, I'm proud of you, right? So working on that film, and you can, by all means, like, just take it in with that understanding when you're watching it, because not everyone who's going to watch it will know that there is that spiritual connection between myself and Mark when they watch it. But for those here who watch it, like, I assure you, you'll sort of see it at a different level, which is, you know, something I'm quite proud of.
There's 2 versions of that. There's a short and a long version.
Yeah, there's like a 90-minute and a 2-hour one. So, yeah.
So which is that one?
It's got both on it,
Both of them?
yeah,
Okay.
so.
So does this 9/11 thing, or 9/11, yeah, I'm sorry, 11/11, mean that where I was today on November 11th, where I was supposed to be?
Absolutely. You're always where you're supposed to be. It's just sometimes we don't realize it, right?
Okay, yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to realize because we might feel, and this is a whole topic in itself, we might feel, be like, how am I where I'm supposed to be if I'm so unhappy? But then we have to ask ourselves, how do we shift that? What am I not learning from this experience? And to understand that as equally as much as this is about light, this is also about darkness. And that's not a negative thing. That's a character developing thing. And that is a huge part of what we have to go through. We have to go through that darkness. And if you can, and a big part of going through that darkness is to understand that you're carrying the light within you. Going back to that meditation we were talking about, that light within you, carry that through the darkness. And you will get through everything.
That's the beauty of the world. I mean, we can live in our head and fight the whole concept. We can live in our heart and go with the flow.
Yeah.
And that's the key, you know. So and that's, in my opinion, what I've experienced is that this whole 2012 transition is when our consciousness, our human consciousness, is maturing enough that we can now trust our heart more than our head.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah, like there's already a part of us who's, you know, we're already connected to that future, that where we are, where we're supposed to be, and it's just a matter of like knowing that and then pulling ourselves towards it.
So the concept of contentment and happiness is very natural because, you know, what makes a parent the happiest is to see their children happy. And every parent can relate to that, right? So if you want to make the universe happy, just be happy. Because the universe is the parent, right? So just stay with the flow of the universe, and that will make the universe content, and that makes you content. But if you fight the universe, then you get into your head and you know, be stubborn and intellectual, then of course you're not in the flow.
Yeah, there is that divine flow, and if I could just sort of like end this whole thing with something to go out on, it's probably something you've heard before. It's a simple lesson of be water. So
water?
simple. Be water. Be water, my friends. So simple. Like, be able to move. Go where the currents take you. If you put up those blockages, that's okay. We all do that at times, and that's going to help us learn those lessons. But eventually, we have to be able to let go.
So we can sing row, row, row your boat gently
Gently down the stream.
down the stream, merrily, merrily, merrily.
Life is but a dream. There you go. Thomas said. And yeah, I think we can end it there. We're probably a little over time, anyways. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you could go on forever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll hang around.